Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our first ever podcast. This is Voice It. This podcast is brought to you and sponsored by the Hurula Ministry of Regional Integration. This is part of their ever-budding multimedia campaign towards ending gender-based violence in Hurula. Now, I am so glad to introduce our first guest who is going to be here on our podcast talking to us today about GBV in Hurula. So we have today the representative from UN Women, the Deputy Director of Youth Affairs, Mr. Piri Kapondeni Manase. Welcome to our podcast, sir. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much, and I'm doing fine. How about you?
I am well. This is such an exciting space to be in today, and I am so glad that the first conversation that we have is from a representative from such an amazing organization that has been doing amazing work in the space of GBV in Hurula so far.
Okay, great. I'm also excited and happy to be part of this good initiative, and being the first, I'm very glad that I'll be talking about GBV. A thing we are passionate about as UN Women.
That is awesome. So let's get right into the meat of it. I am going to start with asking you a question. How can you say we can effectively address gender-based violence in Hurula?
The first thing to do is to ensure that everyone is involved. By everyone, I mean the victims of gender-based violence, the perpetrators, other stakeholders like the non-governmental organizations, country leaders, traditional leaders, and the church. So we can do this by first creating an extensive awareness about GBV that will bring about behavior change among the stakeholders, especially the perpetrators of GBV.
Thank you so much. Now that you also touched on the perpetrators of gender-based violence, who, in your opinion, in the context of Hurula, are the perpetrators of gender-based violence?
The perpetrators of gender-based violence, I can say mostly as it is men. And from this group of men, there are also people who are into drugs, drug abusers. They're also perpetrators of gender-based violence. And generally, just a common man, they are all perpetrators of gender-based violence, because gender-based violence is not just physical, but also mental, so it can be in words and in the suggestive actions.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer. So let me also just build on what you mentioned, that sometimes it's men who have problems with substance abuse and drug abuse. So my question to you is, when fighting the good fight against eliminating gender-based violence in Hurula, is it important to fight and try and eradicate the root problems like substance abuse, unemployment, lack of opportunities? Is that the way that UN Women is kind of trying to use their programs to eliminate GBV, by causing and looking at the root issues and problems that are leading to gender-based violence?
Yeah, you are very right. We are trying to address the problem from the grassroots. So we need to disseminate information to these perpetrators, like the drug abusers and others, for them to know that the vice is bad. So, and for them to avoid it is very imperative for both women and men, and generally the Hurula community. So, as UN Women, we are trying to address this from the grassroots by addressing the vice, the gender-based violence, through disseminating of information to the people involved.
Okay, and we know that GBV is obviously a very sensitive issue. Please, can you let us know exactly how that affects your response when it comes to creating programs centered around tackling gender-based violence?
Yeah, like GBV is very sensitive, and you find that sometimes the victim will fail to report the case. Maybe the victim won't open up to say, I'm being victimized, I'm being violated because of my sex, because of who I am, because I'm a woman, or because I'm a man. So because of that sensitivity, people fail to report, and it makes us to find some difficulties in addressing the problem, because it's hard for us to know who is affected and who is not.
Oh, that is such a very opportune way to actually describe it. The reporting systems that are there right now, that are in place, do not necessarily make it easy for everybody to actually come and report. Because I will tell you one thing, as a woman living in Hurula, if I felt like my life was in danger, would I be able to freely go and report? And I would say no. And unfortunately, there haven't been any other created ways or means to do reporting safely. What do you say would be the best way, or any ideas? Or does UN Women have anything on the horizon in terms of finding protective ways for women to report GBV cases?
The first thing is to introduce a place where people can freely report, because currently we only have the police and the victim support unity, and sometimes, most especially, people who are victimized, people who are affected by who are victims of gender-based violence, they are afraid to report such cases. So for us as UN Women, after creating an extensive awareness about gender-based violence, we are planning of establishing a system where someone can easily report using their mobile devices. Since this time around, a lot of people have their cell phones, and it's easier for someone to communicate on phone than in person in such instances. So we'll give them a platform where they can easily communicate using their mobile phones.
And what do we say to the vulnerable groups who do not have access to either smartphones or mobile data to be able to use that form of intervention when it comes to reporting? Are we thinking of other ways in order to reach people living in rural areas, people who do not have access to data, people who only have access to SD phones? Are we thinking of interventions for those?
Yes, thinking of intervention for those, and we plan of creating a form of awareness where we visit such rural places. We go there, we do some activities, some sensitizing on gender-based violence, and encourage people to report cases. And during such moments, we'll be mounting a tent at a nearby place where people can go in with confidence and in a closed place, where they will be free to discuss with a psychosocial counselor about what's affecting them concerning gender-based violence. And from that, we'll have data and proceed with some informed decisions to address gender-based violence in such places.
Thank you so much. It's so refreshing to hear that there's so many more other innovations that are moving forward in terms of better ways for reporting for women in Hurula. Now, let me ask you, let us just take 2 seconds to discuss gender equality in Hurula in its current state. Where do you see gender equality in our country in the next 5 years, based on UN Women and the projections of the programs?
Currently, gender equality in Hurula, I can say, is in a good state. And in the next 5 years, as UN Women, we are planning to advocate for policies that will be gender mainstreaming, will include both women and men in the key positions of government and both public and private institutions. In that way, we'll be sure that in the next 5 years, the differences in gender that are holding positions will be reduced. The gap will create a bridge to reduce the gap between men and women in key positions.
I love to hear that, bridging the gap between men and women in key positions. On that note, thank you so much, Mr. Manasseh, for taking your time to come onto our new podcast, Voice It. We have been blessed to make sure that UN Women has been present in this conversation, and we look forward to more conversations to come. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to give a call to everyone in Hurula that addressing the issues of gender-based violence is very important for socio-economic development in our country. Therefore, we really need everyone to come on board and ensure that this vice ends. And as the UN Women, together with the UNDP, will be running a a GBV campaign this week, and we are calling on everyone to take up the challenge.
Thank you so much. We're going to have our eyes peeled on social media looking out for the GBV campaign, and let all of the listeners know that it is your job, it is your right, and it is the benefit to everyone in Hurula to make sure that we make sure GBV is eliminated by 2030. Thank you so much, sir, for your time, and we look forward to our future conversations. From me, over.